Hello, everyone, and welcome back to day 2 of our Regeneration Advent Calendar, where we're talking about Power of the Daleks. And once again, I'm joined with Luke.
Yes, hello everyone. Yesterday we did 10th Planet, so if you haven't checked that out yet, go give us a watch to find out what we thought there. And then things get a bit spicy at the end as William Hartnell regenerates into Patrick Troughton, the first shake-up in the show's history, and here we are talking about the events which follow.
What better way to start this little discussion of Power of the Daleks than talk about the man who had probably the hardest job of them all, Patrick Troughton. What are your memories of Troughton? Because Troughton is your doctor.
He very much is the man, the myth, the legend. I mean, my first story would have been Tomb of the Cybermen.
Same here.
Yeah, I think I was quite young when I first watched that. I remember having nightmares about the Cybermen in that story. It was very terrifying, but couldn't help but watch it all the way through. I think there's something about black and white, isn't there, when you're a kid that makes it even more terrifying. I'm not sure what, but it just adds that quality to
I
it.
think as well, when you learn about the missing episodes, I think you have more of an appreciation to that could be lost. I'm glad I can experience it. I mean, this is a lost one, but
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Tomb was lost for quite a while, wasn't it? That was like the big find in 92, I think.
I feel like for our generation of fans, we get that with Enemy of the World and Web of Fear, but we still have that moment of going, oh, we can actually watch these now. And I think Tomb hasn't had that effect on us as such, but we can go, Tomb's a great story.
Yeah, I mean, Tomb was one of the ones for a certain generation of fans that, because it was lost for a while, built up that legacy around it, didn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
And then when it came back, I think some were disappointed, but I think most people now are pretty happy with the full product, aren't they?
I think that's a tendency with the missing episodes, that you have like the soundtrack, you listen to it, and obviously you visualize it and you can make it as big and bold as you want, and then you watch it and it's not quite as you pictured it in your head, so it's never quite gonna live up to your expectation, I think.
Yeah, you put them more on a pedestal because they're lost, don't you?
Yeah.
You don't want to say anything bad about them in that sense.
I think this is the Power of the Daleks is definitely going to be one of those ones where, does it deserve to be on a pedestal? I'm sure we'll answer that later. But Troughton, he's a great doctor. He's a great doctor. He's very much the archetype of what has gone since, really, because you notice practically every doctor has an element of Troughton's doctor there. That sort of buffoonery underneath sort of this quite scheming doctor, really.
Yeah, I mean, with William Hartnell, he wasn't fully formed yet, but the first Doctor as a character wasn't. He grew over time, whereas I think each Doctor after is like a fully formed character now. They've gone through the development, and so they sort of mostly stay the same, and that's not a bad thing in any way. I mean, by the time you get to the new series, it gets shaken up a bit with the Time War. That adds a bit more to the character. But they're all sort of playing that same role within the story. They're there to help, they're there to fix things. It wasn't always quite like that with Hartnell. This is the show becoming more what we know it as today.
I think you said, I don't know if it was on the 10th Planet one or just privately, that the mission statement of the show changed from Hartnell was very much let's go and, our destiny's in the stars, let's go and search for them, where you have in Troughton's era, the moon base is where you get the principle of there are some corners of the universe, which breed the most terrible things that must be fought. That's very much the mission statement of Doctor Who, very much now.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like you have with Jodie Whittaker's 13th Doctor in Series 11, there's that line, I see things aren't right, I help where I can, or something along those lines, isn't it? I know, it was in the trailer.
So yeah, I know what I mean, yeah. Like, sorting out fair play throughout the universe, that sort of stuff. Yeah, there's an optimism there, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And with Troughton's Doctor, he's not quite fully formed yet in Power, I'd say. It's not until the moon base where he settles, because I think Patrick Troughton himself didn't quite know how to play this role yet. You could see in things like The Underwater Menace, he's maybe hamming it up a bit more.
Yeah. And you've got the weird obsession with hats because it doesn't really. And you've got that sort of weird sort of dress up phase with the second Doctor. I say weird. I guess that's him finding his character because you've got him dressing up in the Highlanders as like a German lady, I think, from memory. And then Underwater Menace, he's dressed up as like one of the market stall holders, and then Power, you've got the stovepipe hat, what just magically appears. And then
it's fascinating, isn't it? Because the show just doesn't know quite what to do just yet. They're still finding themselves out as they go along, which is very much nature of television at this time. It is brutal. It is very much things have to be written quickly, and then rehearsing for a week, recording them, and then it goes out sometimes the week after.
And that was the thing what possibly killed Troughton off in terms of the show, really.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose we'll get around to that tomorrow, won't we?
Yeah,
we'll talk about Patrick Troughton leaving. We're just starting his year, and then we're going to be saying goodbye to him very shortly.
Yeah, this is the strange thing with this series because we're sort of at the beginning of a Doctor, then the tail end. So it's interesting to see how much of a shift there is. Obviously, we know what's gone in between, but it's just for this marathon. It's quite interesting to see.
It's like a whistle-stop tour of Doctor Who in general, isn't it? The Doctor's life, I suppose.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, we very much see how each Doctor began and how they came to an end, and then you see with that how much they've grown in the time in between.
How they found whether they found their Doctor straight away or it took a bit of time for them to get it. Really.
Very much so. Yeah, I suppose, shall we dive into a bit of trivia here about Power of the Daleks and
yes,
factoids?
Let's do that.
I mean, I'm sure most people know a lot of this already, but
yeah,
it's just fun to have a little discussion really about the little behind the scenes things because, obviously, number one, Patrick Troughton's first story.
Oh, what, really?
Yeah, that is blowing my mind there.
I
mean, well, maybe 10th Planet is.
Well, yeah, well, see, you've destroyed your own factoid with that.
Yeah, but he's not credited.
Okay,
this is the first time Patrick Troughton is credited. So, there you go.
The working Oh, go, sorry.
Oh, no, you go with working title.
I was going to say the working titles for this story was The Destiny of Doctor Who. I can see that kind of working because this is a story what decides the fate of Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's sort of similar to what they did with Trial of a Time Lord there, isn't it? It's more like a meta one because it's very much in the public eyes. What is the destiny of Doctor Who?
And then the other one was Servants of Masters. Which I think Power of the Daleks probably sells a bit better because it's not only Daleks getting power, but it's the power of human greed.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's all like power in more senses than one, isn't it? It's not only electrical power in this for the Daleks, there's static electricity, but it's also the power they have over the humans in the end, and the power of their deception throughout.
I feel like we've gone very deep very early.
Yeah, we're getting into the metatextual side of things, aren't we?
Oh, for sure. But hey, that's why we're here.
Yeah. I mean, so a myth around this story is that, or kind of a myth around 10th Planet and this story, is that it wasn't announced publicly that William Hartnell would be regenerating, or renewing, but it was. That was announced in a newspaper, wasn't it?
Very tiny. It was like blink and you'd miss it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it shows how Doctor Who had sort of fallen out of the public consciousness a little bit around this time. It wasn't quite as big as the heyday of Dalek Mania had passed by this point.
I think that's kind of crazy because Dalek Mania was 63, probably 60. I guess Dalek Mania still had resonance because I think the second Cushing film came out in 66 as well.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that sort of drop off in a way. And maybe Daleks work as that pulling factor back, not only to say here's your new Doctor, but Daleks. Everyone likes Daleks.
Yeah, you could very much see why they chose the Daleks for Troughton's first story because you've got that uncertain element. Ben and Polly are still relatively new as well. They've only been in the series for 12 episodes before this point. So, get the Daleks in there, get people back in and get them to give Patrick Troughton a chance. First Dalek story not written at all by Terry Nation. He'd gone off to America by this point to try and sell them to different companies over there, get them their own show. And so David Whittaker steps in for this one, as he does later with Evil of the Daleks, before Nation takes the rights away fully. I think he probably had like some say in it, but I think he'd washed his hands with Doctor Who at this point.
I think Dennis Spooner wrote the final version of the scripts, but he didn't receive a credit, I think.
Oh.
But I think David Whittaker's sort of known to be the Dalek man, because like throughout the Hartnell era, like Dalek Master Plan, I think they were back and forth really, or it might have been Dennis Spooner, but it was
Dennis Spooner for Dalek
was it?
Master
Okay.
Plan. He did like, yeah.
I think
they did half and half with Terry Nation.
Yeah, because I think David Whittaker, he did like Evil, and like he gets the Dalek characters right, which I'm sure we'll talk about when we get onto the actual review of Power.
Yeah, very much so. But any other little factoids you got for us?
This was the first full story to show a full body shot of the Dalek mutant inside its casing.
Ah, that's interesting. It's a shame that clip's lost.
It is really, because it's a bit of history, but there we go.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of lost, this is the only Dalek story to be completely lost.
There we go.
Eternity, unless you count Mission to the Unknown, you know, that the Dalek cutaway episode as its own full thing.
And this is the only second Doctor story in his era not to feature Jamie.
Yeah, which feels weird, doesn't it, when you watch it?
Yeah,
it doesn't feel right not having him there.
Jamie's just part of the second Doctor's furniture, really, so it is bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, they rectify that problem pretty quickly. He comes along, next story, Highlanders.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, since it was lost, there's been quite a few like attempts to reconstruct this, hasn't there? It's probably the most popular one, because there was a fan film, wasn't there, back in the early 2000s?
Yeah, I think it even got a stage play as well. Might have been Evil. I think there was a big thing in the early 2000s, like 90s, to get Missing Doctor Who on stage.
Yeah, and then finally, the BBC came round and did an official animation for it in 2016. It announced to celebrate 50 years of the story, and also to give something to the BBC Store to keep that going. But that didn't quite work out too well, because the BBC Store shut down the following year, 2017, in November.
Yeah, because I think it's one of the first occasions where, you had like Web of Fear and Enemy of the World, where you could pre-order it before the DVD came out. And I think this probably had more of a selling fact, because it's a piece of Doctor Who history. And I remember you could tweet or share something, and you could get like the first 3 minutes of episode 1 of Power of the Daleks by just tweeting this thing. So that's how I managed to see a little bit of it, because I'm a purist and I wait for things on physical media. But then you also had I think a couple months later, you had the Steelbook release, which had the colour animation of it.
Yeah, it wasn't animated in colour, this one. It was an American company that came along and then like coloured it in frame by frame, didn't they? Which
I don't mind. I feel like that's a bit sacrilege to say, but from memory, when I watched the colour animation, I enjoyed it. It's just something about seeing 60s Daleks in colour what just pops, and it just makes my fan heart very happy.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you've now got that properly with Evil of the Daleks.
I mean, I have only watched the colour version of Evil of the Daleks. I guess that's the way they're more designed, whereas this one was black and white, and the 2021 wasn't made in colour at all. There wasn't even, I don't even think that it was discussed to be made in colour.
No, I think they very much wanted this one to be a black and white exclusive one. They say, I think, is it Charles Norton, the director of this, or producer? Yeah, he very much felt like the tone of this suited black and white. I think he was, funnily enough, mentioned, you can't imagine stories like Web of Fear in colour, but they went along and animated that one in colour. Or episode 3 of it, at least. Yeah,
that one doesn't quite work, but the version we all watched, because we decided so we're all on the same playing field, was the 2020 version, and I'm sure we'll talk about whether it's an improvement over the 2016 one when we get onto our review.
Very much so. Yeah, I suppose speaking of said review, if we're done with the factoids, I suppose we can dive into the plot for this story, starting with part 1. Do you want to take it away?
Yeah, I think this is one of the artistic liberties. We get the regeneration again, but I think I get why they've done it, because if you haven't picked up a 10th planet, you get the whole selling fact of it. This is a Doctor's first story. So I quite like having the first Doctor's inclusion. I think it's quite creepily done within this animation.
It's like a little cold open, isn't it? That wasn't there on the original broadcast.
Yeah, so we pick off with that, the regeneration, and we have a new man, a new Doctor, who is a little bit giddy. He's not quite all there. He's all dizzy. And you have Ben and Polly really doubting, who is this? Especially Ben. I think Polly's a little bit more acceptive of it, really. Because she's trying to reassure Ben, like, oh, what he said in the tracking room about this body and mind's running a bit thin.
What? So he goes and gets himself a new one?
Wow, we're recreating Power Of The Daleks part 1 here.
Yeah.
So the Doctor gets up, sets the coordinates up, and takes off. And off they go. The Doctor checks this chest, which is full of a load of things.
Is this the first? No, it's not the first appearance of the chest, is it?
No, I don't think so.
You sort of more relate it to Troughton, though.
You do, because like Abominable Snowman, he does it again. The chest is back.
Yeah.
Even in like the Daughter of the Gods audio, he's put on like a Quark's head. Where you see him recall like a load of items, like a dagger from the Crusades.
Yeah, Saladin's dagger.
And then he pulls out a mirror, and we get a little scene where he sees his reflection for the first time, and the muscles are still a bit stiff. He gets his jacket on, which I presume is Hartnell's jacket. And there's a piece of metal in there, and the Doctor's like extermination, and that very much sets for the tone for the episode. For we might get some Daleks in this. If the title didn't give it away.
Yeah, you get like that little sting, don't you, of the music, which very much relates to Daleks. That does feel a bit weird that he's having this premonition of the Daleks there.
I think in the original script there was going to be reference to Susan, and this should have been in the factoid section, but it's just come back to me. And I think there was going to be reference that the Daleks destroyed the Doctor's home planet. There was going to be like a little inference there.
Which is a funny little call forward, because that kind of eventually happened, but not really.
Yeah.
The Time War and such. But yeah, I mean, that would have been a weird retcon early on, because obviously he didn't even know the Daleks when we get round to the Daleks, the dead planet.
So we have a whole little scene about Ben trying to prove he's not the Doctor, because he's trying to get the Doctor's ring back on his finger, and he's like, well, if I'd like to see you get like a butterfly back, and it's like chrysalis.
Yeah, it's the Cinderella shoe, isn't it?
Yeah, very much. But you have that sort of him trying to find his 500-year diary, because the Doctor's like, the Doctor kept a diary, so it's playing, is he actually the Doctor? Is the first Doctor actually just been like teleported away? Which I think is quite an interesting thing to play with.
Yeah, it also sort of like is the early version of regeneration trauma, isn't it? Because he's not quite fully formed in himself. Yeah, and that's sort of like more of an excuse as well for the actors to play around a bit more when they first become the Doctor. But yeah, it's quite interesting seeing how that plays into it. Of, like you say, he doesn't always call himself the Doctor. He refers to the first Doctor as like his own individual almost sometimes. And you wonder, is he doing that deliberately? Is he playing with Ben and Polly? Is he like not quite sure if he is the Doctor yet in himself? There's certainly a few ways that could be read.
Or whether he's got to earn the title of the Doctor. In like a new series fashion, in a way.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes it's sort of like there to maybe trip up Ben, because he like says, oh, the Doctor would know or something, and Ben's like, but you are the Doctor.
Yeah. So it's good how it sort of plays around with that. I like that.
Yeah, and it's a good little while in the TARDIS, isn't it, at the start here?
I'd say like a good 10 minutes of it is the TARDIS.
Yeah, 5 to 10 definitely.
So we arrive on the planet of Vulcan because after this we get a little chat saying, "Oh, we must have arrived." And Ben's like, "Well, we haven't checked all the readings and stuff." And he's like, "Well," he started to read it off. And it's like, "Oh yeah, he must be the Doctor if he knows all that." So off they go, wandering around some mercury swamps, where we have the Doctor testing his new legs, jumping over a boulder.
Yeah,
Where
as you do.
As you do. I mean, he wouldn't test your new pair of legs over a boulder.
He's got his hat on by this point as well. He grabbed that before he left the TARDIS.
Yeah, it just baffles me that how I think it's like episode 3. I think when he just randomly gets it again. Like where have you stored it? Is it your pockets? I know pockets can be bigger on the inside, but yeah, minor nitpick, I guess.
I suppose it's something that you're not sure whether it's just with the animation.
Yeah,
because obviously when it's being filmed, it's a lot easier to
know where it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, continuing that, we have the Doctor be greeted by the actual Earth Examiner, but he is shot. The Doctor goes and examines the body and finds a badge. He takes the Examiner badge for his own use, where he
examines the Examiner.
He examines the Examiner. There we go. Where he gets knocked out by Bragan.
But I don't know. Is it actually revealed it's him yet?
Well, I think it is, because you can tell it's Bernard Archer.
Yeah.
From the way I mean, maybe it was more skillfully done on TV, but I think you can tell from the animation it's meant to be him. Where you have Ben and Polly trying to chase after the Doctor, but Polly succumbs to the mercury fumes.
Yeah, she gets a bit too close, doesn't she?
She does indeed.
I mean, it's quite a fascinating idea, isn't it? This mercury swamp.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's a shame they don't use it again.
Yeah, like it's only really there for the first part, isn't it? And once you're inside the colony, they never go outside again until it's back to the TARDIS.
It's like the perimeter of the colony and stuff like that. You're like, well, obviously Hensel's gone. I know we're jumping the gun here, but he must have gone far. Why can't we explore a little bit of that? In a way,
I suppose it's just budget, really, isn't it?
I guess so.
It's like they're trying to create the illusion of this larger colony, but it's not quite clear what's going on with it.
Man, it's like the Dalek randomly at the end in the Mercury Swamp. I know it's a great visual, but did we see a Dalek go that far out?
Yeah. Also, how did it go that far out and then get blown up by the power surge? Like, surely it's disconnected from the power there. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's a nitpick.
We're nitpick but we get to review.
So we're jumping ahead as well.
We're jumping ahead. Yeah, it's fine. Going back to it, we have them arrive in the colony, and like we weren't expecting an Earth Examiner. And there's all talk about this mysterious capsule Lesterson found, who is sort of one of the main people the story focuses on. So the Doctor pushes his weight because, he has access everywhere, and off he goes and examines the capsule. And he's greeted with a bit of a frosty reception, and they open the capsule, and inside, 2 Daleks.
Yeah. It sort of reminds me of Quatermass and the Pit a bit, having the capsule there. Like the ship from that. It gives those similar vibes, I suppose.
When they say capsule, you think it's going to be like quite a small little thing. But obviously it's got to be quite a big thing to have all these Daleks inside.
I think it's meant to be bigger on the inside, isn't it? Like the TARDIS.
Is it? Okay. So that always sort of baffles me when you see the actual set photos on like the tele snaps. You're like, how does this work?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's ever like explicitly mentioned in the story, but yeah, it's definitely meant to be bigger on the insides.
Yeah,
because they have that technology with the time machine in The Chase, after all.
Yeah, that is true. But yeah, inside the capsule, we have a little mutant scuttle across the floor, and that is how episode 1 ends.
Oh, you have that brilliant scene just before where it's like, Ben, Polly, come in and meet the Daleks. Because like he's wandered off on his own, and then Ben and Polly have followed.
That is wonderful. I do like that bit. It's one of the little surviving bits we actually have as well, so it's nice to have that.
I mean, I think it was the trailer for the story as well.
Yeah, I think it was on like the Lost in Time DVDs, like the BBC trailer for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for a story that's lost, we do have quite a fair bit of footage from it. Some of it even discovered quite recently, like 21st century discovery at least.
Yeah, I think they found a load of color photos as well for it, didn't they?
Mm.
What were recently auctioned off.
Yeah, it's crazy how stuff still turns up. So, there's still always hope for episodes as well, maybe, if we're lucky. Yeah, I suppose, after that, part 2, they also noticed that a Dalek is missing. There's just 2 in there, but there's like an indent in the floor is now,
Yeah,
like
an imprint,
a gap in the dust where, a third Dalek has obviously been. So Lesterson, the scientist, must have been in there beforehand and took him out. So part 2 is mainly just the Doctor trying to throw his weight around a bit, really, and say, oh, I want these Daleks melted down or broken up or down, either way. Some nice little bits of dialogue like that Troughton's obviously having a lot of fun with. Meanwhile, the colony's not quite having any of it at this point. The governor is sort of unsure, but Lesterson's trying to worm his way to convince the governor that, these Daleks are fine and harmless, and they can be used to the colony's advantage. They're going to be their servants. And so he's running some tests on a Dalek with Janley, who is part of this rebel faction within the colony. It's never quite explained what this rebel faction wants, what the governor's doing wrong with running the colony. But yeah, she's like holding meetings and things. Lesterson doesn't really want anything to do with it, but he's like, oh, you can use my room if you want, just don't drag me into it. He's only really interested in science rather than politics. And so they're testing the Dalek, working out what each of its different appendages does, and suddenly Lesterson's right-hand man is shot. And, we're led to believe that he's alive at first. It's then revealed that he did actually die in the infirmary. So he is taken away there, and the Daleks' weapons are removed from this point. And so while the Doctor is trying to convince the governor that the Daleks need to be melted down, Lesterson brings one along to show the governor, and it's like chanting, "I am your servant," and the Doctor is terrified.
So episode 3 is very much when the Governor Hensel is persuaded that the Daleks could help the colony for the greater good, and we have the Doctor vowing under his breath that he will stop them. So this is very much where Lesterson's testing the Daleks' sort of knowledge and how useful they can be. And this is when we find out that Quinn, one of our supporting characters, is sent for the Examiner, and we have one of the characters, Bragan, who is very much fighting for the top dog, sort of dismisses sort of Quinn, saying, well, he's trying to undermine the actual governor. And obviously Quinn is deputy governor, so when Hensel goes off on his little tour around the colony, Quinn becomes in charge. So Quinn is locked up. He's one of the people who could help stop the Daleks, but he's gone now. So this is when we sort of get like this little secret meeting where we have Janley organising the rebels for a secret little meeting to see that.
They're also sort of like testing the Daleks' weapons, aren't they? Thinking they can use the Daleks for this rebellion's advantage. I mean, a lot of this is going on like in the background through part 2 as well. I forgot to mention like the whole Quinn storyline, him having sent for the Examiner. But I think almost the problem with this story is because it's all in one setting, you do sort of lose track of what part's what in some ways, don't you?
Yeah, very, very much so. So we have like the Daleks agreeing with Lesterson that they can make like a meteor shower thing 100% accurate, whereas the only one they've got is 70. So we get Polly being sort of taken away by the rebel group. So with Lesterson sort of agreeing to help the Daleks by giving them power so they can convert their power into static and make Vulcan become a second Skaro.
Pretty much. And then you have the nice ending of "we will get our power," and Lesterson sort of stood there watching. getting a bit suspect, isn't he?
Yeah, because episode 4 is
Suspicious.
pretty much the sort of a downfall, very very sort of like a Shakespearean downfall of his character. So do you want to take it away with episode 4?
Yeah, I mean, Lester himself is a wonderful character. Definitely the highlight of the story. But yeah, we'll talk more about him a bit later. But yeah, so after he witnesses that, he does sort of cut off their power supply pretty quickly and sort of gives him a reminder that, I'm in charge here. You're not to do this, because he is starting to get a bit worried now about the Daleks. Their independent thinking starts to terrify him a bit, because they might not be the docile servants he's been led to believe by them. But unfortunately, human politics gets in the way now, because he's ready to go agree with the doctor, or the examiner as he sees him, that these Daleks should be melted down. But Jan Lee is very much against this, because she wants to use the Daleks for the rebel cause. So she holds the fact that his lab assistant was actually killed by the Daleks, and then they dumped his body in the mercury swamp. Quite a gruesome thought, that.
Yeah.
But yeah. And so that is held over him, that he allowed this death to happen. And so they use that for him to keep his mouth shut for a little while, as the Daleks get their claws into the colony ever more so, while the humans fight amongst themselves, really, for power. It sounds a lot better than it actually comes across, unfortunately, I would say.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Polly is missing, captured by the rebels, which gives Annika Wills a holiday for this episode. Hey. That's another little factoid there. So it's just the Doctor and Ben, really. Ben, obviously, in Ben fashion, wants to go look for Polly. But the Doctor is sort of more thinking, she'll be fine. She can look after herself. She's a smart girl. And he more wants to get to the bottom of what's going on in the colony. And then the episode comes to an end with Lesterson walking into the capsule to find that it's bigger on the inside, and there are hidden compartments in there where there's a Dalek conveyor belt, and it's a beautiful sequence of the Daleks all coming together, isn't it?
I think this is one of the moments in animation where it really can convey that sense of, oh my god, there's loads of them.
Yeah, you have like a shot at the end in the animation, which is very much original to the animation. There's no way it would have been done in the original, where it like pans out and you see this whole room full of Daleks. But at the same time, it sort of gives me a Planet of the Daleks vibe. You can almost imagine them getting all the little toys there, assembled for that scene. So I can forgive little tweaks like that, little creative liberties like that. I think also during part 4 is where the Doctor gets locked up alongside Quinn.
Yeah, I think Ben gets taken as well, I think.
Yeah, Ben gets taken right at the end, doesn't he? Because that allows Michael Craze to have on holiday for episode 5.
Because I think this is when Jan Lee says, here's the weapon, and starts testing the Dalek weapons for the rebels.
Yeah, that happens here.
And
that's when Bragan is revealed as like the one behind the rebels. Shock.
Ooh.
Like,
little plot twist there.
He's ideally cast as a villain, and it's obvious from the start that he's implicated in this in some way. Like we say, it's pretty clear that it's him who shot the original examiner. And so, yeah, it's all looking a bit bleak in part 4, isn't it?
It is. Episode 5, we continue with Lesterson being shocked with what he just witnessed. So he runs out of the capsule and tries and shuts the sort of door of the actual capsule, because this is when he starts to agree with the Doctor. So he goes rushing to the prison cell to get the Doctor out to go, look, you're right, but he gets dismissed. So this is very much of the Doctor and Quinn trying to escape using sort of musical notes, which I quite like, using the sort of water to mimic sound. So we have sort of Lesterson's brought before Bragan, as we sort of have the Daleks laying down their own sort of cable power for the actual capsule so they can get more power. And I think that this
is all very nicely getting out of his hands, isn't it?
Yes, very much. I
didn't order them to do that.
I think this is the part when we learn that the Daleks can store power. So this is sort of adds more retention. So we have sort of Velmar and Kebbel helping the Daleks with this sort of power, and we have sort of Polly with them helping that, even though Polly's hands are tied. And we have Hensel.
Yeah, they're keeping her close, aren't they? To keep an eye
Yeah.
on her.
So we have sort of Hensel return from his little duty from the perimeter, and this is when Bragan asks about Hensel asks about sort of why is their cable being laid down and everything, and this is when sort of Hensel loses his power as the governor.
Yeah, and I mean, well, not only loses his power as the governor, he loses his life as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dalek shoots him dead, and you get that nice line of why do human beings kill other human beings?
And then you get sort of the Daleks really questioning, maybe this is our little plan. Maybe we can make them fight and destroy themselves, and then we can sweep in. And that's when we sort of get the Dalek army starting to amass, ready to conquer and destroy.
Yeah, you get that's one of these surviving clips, isn't it? Where it's them all coming through the doors, but it's really just the same four going round in a circle.
Yeah, it's great. It's wonderfully done, and it's creative of sort of amassing more props than they actually had. I think that's good.
Yeah, it's very well made. Yeah, and then on to part 6, where the Daleks are ready to conquer and destroy, and the rebels and guards are fighting among themselves for control of the colony. But Bragan himself isn't really ready to give over control to the rebels. He's very much using them as pawns in his own game, and now that he is governor, he doesn't need the rebels anymore, so they are going to get wiped out by the Daleks and his security forces.
This part is very much the massacre episode, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an action-packed episode, and also another fun little factoid
there we go.
Forgot earlier. This was shot on film, all of it, unlike pretty much most of Classic Who, which was done on videotape and then a mix of film for either model shots or location footage. This episode was done using film in the studio because of all the action involved in it. Film is a bit more suited to that. And so if this episode had survived, it just makes it even more gutting that it didn't. It could have been upscaled to true HD, alongside the Spearhead from Space. It's so close. And you can even tell it by looking at their telesnaps. It does have that crisper quality that film gives. Yeah, and I mean, you can see why with all the action that's going on in this episode. And I mean, maybe the animation doesn't quite do a little bit full justice. I think 2020 has improved on the 2016 version.
Yeah, it's not as clunky. Like you can hear Daleks wheeling when they're not actually moving, but you can see them actually move within this one.
Yeah, it adds a lot more to it, but it's still maybe not quite there as to what the original vision was.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Doctor has eventually found himself reunited with Ben and Polly. There's a lot of running from Daleks, isn't there, really?
Yeah, it's a lot of ducking and diving.
Playing dead as well.
Yeah.
And Janley is also killed during the skirmishes.
But you have a wonderful moment between Janley and I think Velmar when they use the Daleks to destroy, Bragan's men. Because those are the ones they're fighting for. Because Bragan sort of gives Janley an ultimatum: either you help him or
join me or die.
Yeah, because she's off to kill the rebel leaders, but Velmar's using the Daleks, and the Daleks say, "Well, we're going to help you destroy Bragan's force," and then we get a great scene when the Daleks just turn on them, and then that causes Janley's demise. Really,
yeah. It's a nice message of she's going for all this power, but it's turned on her in the end.
You get that really horrific moment of just seeing the bodies all lying on the floor and the Dalek just glides past them. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, it's like that nice bit of 60s music as well, isn't it?
Yes.
It really tonally suits that. I think you have that same music in the original Dalek story when the Foul leader is killed during the ambush. and it pans over all the mess of food and his body. It's very well used. But meanwhile, alongside this, the Doctor, Ben, and Polly make their way back to Leston's lab. While they've got a plan now, Quinn is going to the governor's office to convince Bragan to send his men in so that the Doctor can have time to work on his plan. I think it's before he gets to the laboratory, actually, because he needs to clear all the Daleks out of the laboratory, so it's like a distraction, send in Bragan's men to be killed, really. It's quite a callous plan from the Doctor, and it's not really called out on.
It just shows sort of the deviousness of sort of Troughton's Doctor, because like at the end of the story, you get Ben going, so you knew this would happen all along in a way. And he's like, well, it's just plain, really.
It's like the story itself doesn't seem to call it out for it. It's a bit of a dubious moral moment, really.
I guess if it was a new series story, they would. It's just like, we need to wrap it up. Let's just do it this way, really.
Yeah. I mean, it could have at least maybe had a line in there or something along the lines of, if I'm quick enough, no one will get killed anyway. Like, the Daleks are just going there to meet them. Hopefully, if his plan works, they'll all be wiped out along the way. I suppose it's a case of they're gonna get killed one way. People are gonna die one way or the other.
Well,
at least this way. Yeah, we'll be able to stop them. But so Quinn is holding Bragan at gunpoint. Meanwhile, the Doctor gets into the lab, meets up with Leston, and finds out what's going on with their power, where they're getting it from, and then I think they have to go hunt down Velmar, don't they? Because he's the only one who knows where the Dalek power is, and once they find him, they're able to turn the Daleks' power against them. Instead of cutting off their power supply, because they've now got their own stored static to keep them going, he overloads it, and you get like a nice little scene of all the Daleks exploding and blowing up, and even inside the capsule, you've got the mutants blowing up as well. And that's another bit that translates well into animation. I think most things Dalek related translate well into animation, really.
They do look great in animation.
Yeah. And I think you do have a bit of that as surviving footage when they're being wiped out. It does feel very similar to the Daleks, this story, in a lot of ways, with moments like that. It's like their destruction at the end of that story.
Yeah, I can see that,
Yeah, where their power source is knocked out. I suppose in that it was cut off, whereas in this it's overloaded instead. And from that, the whole colony's power network is blown a huge fuse, isn't it? And so they're not very happy with the Doctor as he leaves. But before that happens, Bragan grabs the gun off Quinn. He's ready to, assume command again, pretend that this was all part of his plan, and he is the true hero of the story. But then Velmar comes along and shoots him before Bragan can shoot Quinn. And so it's sort of left with Velmar and Quinn as the surviving leaders of the colony, I suppose.
Yeah, to pick up the pieces.
Yeah. And so the Doctor, Ben, and Polly return to the TARDIS, victorious, but like you said, there's a bit of a note of despair there as well. Like things, it's all similar to Warriors of the Deep, isn't it? If there should have been another way, it's very much the Doctor's been warning them about the Daleks this whole time, but they've not listened, and the colony has paid the price for it. Not the ultimate price, but there has been a price paid along the way. And it then says, "Oh, don't worry about this Dalek that somehow made its way out to the Mercury Swamp and got right next to the TARDIS conveniently for this final shot. It's just a load of scrap metal," he says, or scrap iron, something along those lines. They get into the TARDIS and head off to Scotland. Meanwhile, the Dalek ice stalk starts to raise a little bit. So, this ominous note that the Daleks always survive.
It's a great ending, I think.
Yeah, it's a fitting ending for the story.
But what do we think of the actual story? This is the question.
I mean, we've let out some of our thoughts along the way.
Yeah.
And it's been mixed, to say the least. I think there's a lot of good ideas here. But they're good ideas that have been done better since in other stories, like the whole manipulative side of the Daleks. It's even called back to in Victory of the Daleks with the I am your soldier line.
Which I think I prefer. But they've gone all out with like the Ironside. And to me, I just like the Ironside Dalek. That's just something nice about seeing, like, because a Dalek's a tank and an Ironside lends itself to that Dalek tank.
It's the ultimate Dalek tank, really.
Yeah. And I think the Daleks are probably the strongest thing about this story for me.
Yeah, I'm not too interested in the struggle of the colony. I like the concept behind it with the humans vying for power, the idea that if they'd only worked together, they could have saved a lot of lives and not had to worry about the Daleks. But because they're more interested in using the Daleks than thinking, what do the Daleks actually want? It's ultimately their downfall. But it's just, the stakes are never clear. We don't know quite what the rebels are rebelling for.
Yeah, because you get Quinn saying that Hensel's quite popular with the people, so why is Bragan thinking he can just overthrow him? I don't quite get it.
Why is I get why Bragan wants to run the colony himself, but it's like the rebels don't seem to have a clear cause other than, we just don't want Hensel in charge.
But the colony looks pretty well kept. It looks maintained. It doesn't look like it's in dire shape.
Yeah, and I think that's also the problem is you don't see the whole colony. You very much just see this. Like, you have those nice lines about the perimeter and the interior, don't you? Which presumably is like the outermost parts of the colony, and then like the inner ring of it, and then you have the headquarters of the colony where all the action takes place. Really,
I think if you had the rebels on like the outer perimeter trying to get into the center.
Yeah, that's the other thing that feels awkward, really. The fact that they're
rebels
are all they're all like quite high up. Must be in like colony hierarchy. They're not like people living out in the slums who have a reason to detest, like the rich who are gorging themselves while the poor starve. Like, there's nothing like that. There's no reason other than, we need humans fighting each other. Let's set this up inside.
Yeah, that's one thing that doesn't quite work. I think maybe on paper it works better. I don't know whether it's one of those things on paper or the animation doesn't lend it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, either way, there's never really a clear cause given for this group of rebels. Yeah. Which is a shame, really, because, like we say, there's a good idea there with the Daleks pretending to be used, but actually using the humans.
Yeah, just the deviousness and the slightness of the Daleks just comes off well. But it adds more of a layer to them than, I think, up until this point, it's sort of been very much sort of, here they are, they're going to take over, kill people. I think they've added another layer to the Daleks' characteristics within this story.
Yeah, this is the first time the Daleks are like the underdogs to begin with, isn't it?
Yes.
Like, they don't have the power, they need help in this story. Whereas in all of the other stories, they've very much been the dominating force from the outset. They are coming for our heroes, whereas this time they have this rise throughout the story before their eventual fall.
I mean, I think Peter Hawkins does a brilliant job voicing them, the way the sort of slight little bits of inflection when he's saying like servant and like friend, and it just
the
shows
gritted teeth nature of it.
It's great. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, there's one line where he's like about to say something, but then corrects himself, isn't he?
Yeah,
I can't quite remember what it is, but yeah, it's in a conversation with Lesterson towards the middle of the story.
Yeah. Lesterson, great character, like you said earlier. That sort of Shakespearean descent into madness is wonderful.
Yeah, he is absolutely the highlight of the story. What's the actor's name again?
Oh, I feel terrible. I don't know.
Oh, no. I suppose we'll have to quickly look that up, won't we?
Oh, we'll have to quickly have a scan on TARDIS Wiki just to see if we can find the information about it. Hopefully TARDIS Wiki is not going to let us down. Otherwise, it's going to be very embarrassing.
Robert James.
Okay, there we go.
I don't know if he's been in any other Doctor Who stories, but yeah, we're not going down that rabbit hole now.
No, I think that's just the one he's done.
Yeah. But yeah, wonderful actor, giving his all to this performance, especially during the descent into madness. And I think on the human side of things, he is the character who works the most alongside Bragan, because you can believe, like, this scientist who just wants to explore the Daleks for scientific sake. And there's that hubris there of things getting out of hands, and before he knows it, he's gone too far and he can't take back what he's done. And I mean, like, his final moments where he says, "I am your servant," like that descent into madness, it's all very creepy the way he plays it. And I think it's something the animation has captured pretty well.
I think the 2021 handles it better.
It very much, it gets the look in the eye.
I think the performance is quite physical, and I don't feel like some of the physicality translated much into animation. But like you say, it's in the eyes, especially the terror when he sees all the Daleks.
And then there's like almost that blankness to him after that.
Yeah, which is great. Sort of the hollowness of it, really, that he's been sucked out.
Right. How do you feel Troughton does in this first story?
It's very much... there's a lot of meandering, isn't it? It's not the Doctor you know and love, but it's just interesting just to see how he's coming together, what elements are there from the start, what are in the second Doctor in the War Games and that sort of stuff, really. Like that sense of fun. I think that's one thing what's all with that sort of cheeky mysteriousness,
the impishness, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a lot there. And I think that you get that clown sort of McCoyishness there, with sort of that sort of darker undertones that, like I said in episode 6, he's like, well, I sort of knew, but they wouldn't listen.
Yeah, I think this is probably quite close to how he ends up playing it anyway. I think it's after this in Highlanders and Underwater Menace where he drifts in a different direction a bit more before being snapped back in the moon base.
I think episode 1 is the most different out there. There's sort of a creepiness to him when he's like, come here. There's something quite unnerving about that.
Yeah, that's really weird. And he spends a lot of it silent as well. Like he'll be playing his
recorder,
yeah, and Ben will be having a go at him and just sort of asking questions, and the Doctor will just not respond. And then Polly's like, "Oh, come on, leave him alone." He's almost like this child, isn't he? Who doesn't want to.
He's trying to grow up and learn.
Of a tantrum.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to talk. But yeah, he's obviously got a bit more going on to him than that. I mean, like you say, fascination with hats as well. He sort of walks in, sees Bragan's like soldier hat, and he's like, "I would like a hat like that."
No, you wouldn't. It's quite.
I mean, he gets one in the War Games, funnily enough, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, he does. Yeah, I was just thinking that the Bragan sort of military soldier uniform looks very much like the Carlids in Genesis, and there are moments where I think a Genesis of the Daleks, like when the Daleks are in the foul dome, it has that sort of quality to it as well.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose in some ways Genesis is power done better as well.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, because manipulation, yeah.
Yeah, it's just more through Davros rather than the Daleks themselves.
Well, yeah, a different sense of power and rising, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a bit of a slow burner. I think it's one of those ones where you get to episode 4 and 5, and that's when it starts to really start cooking.
Yeah, that's when it punches a lot more.
Because up until sort of the first 3 episodes, very much back and forth going, I'm the examiner, I'm here to examine. No, you're not. Oh, Daleks are evil. No, they're helpful. It's just tug of war.
Yeah, it does meander a lot, sadly, during the first half.
But I feel like episode 6 does make up for a few of its sins, because it's just Daleks being Daleks.
Yeah, that's true. I think they definitely save up the Daleks' best moments for the end.
I think
I do try.
Oh, go on.
I do try to remember as well that the animation does probably take away some of my enjoyment of this. But I think it does have a bit more going for it if we had the original, but sadly we don't. So I am taking that into account when we come to my rating as well. But at the same time, it's not quite the classic it's held up to be. It does have its flaws.
I think you are right, but people probably do put it on a pedestal because of what it is. It's the first time it's dealing with regeneration. I mean,
and also,
Daleks are great, but yeah, that's about it, really.
yeah, and I think there is certainly a bit of potential in there, but it's just not quite realised in the script.
We move on to our ratings.
Yeah, I think it's the right time to. Do you want to go first?
I'm gonna give it. I feel bad saying this, but like we say now, we've talked through some of the issues. I'm like, yeah, I think it's a fair rating. I'm gonna give it an 8.
Oh, really?
I'll give it an 8 out of 10. I think that it's good, it's solid. It's got its flaws.
I think we're diverging here already.
Wow.
I'm going
Okay.
7 again.
Okay. So 10th Planet's on the same level for you.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I would take 10th Planet over this as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a cooker watch, though.
Yeah, that's the other. Probably one of the reasons that I'd take 10th Planet over it.
And I think it's wrong to say this, but I think 10th Planet is more distinct.
You
know.
Yeah. Certainly, it was easier for us to remember a lot of the events. I do feel like that was a much easier synopsis to breeze over than here with Power. I mean, probably people have been shouting at their screens saying, "That doesn't happen in episode 3, you idiots." And we're very sorry for any errors we made there. But
remember, it's just our opinion. If you're angry.
Yeah. It is our opinion that this event happened in episode 3. If it happened in episode 2, you are wrong. It is our opinion.
It's missing anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's fine. It could be jumbled up. So it's all good. So I guess that brings us to a close. We're going to leave Vulcan and materialize in World War One.
Yeah, we'll have said hello, Jamie. Goodbye, Ben and Polly. Hello, Victoria. Goodbye, Victoria. And finally, hello, Zoe.
So join us tomorrow for the 10-part epic of the War Games. All explosions.
all the gunfire from the titles.
Yeah, so I look forward to diving into that, and whether we'll be back on the same page or be different again, who knows? We'll have to wait and see for day 3 of the War Games.
Yeah. Well, day 3 of the Regeneration Advent Calendar.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've Advent Calendar. It's already becoming a long slog already. It's only day 2. But yeah, we'll see you then. So thank you everyone for watching. If you've enjoyed it, please do like and subscribe. Do all that jazzy stuff. Helps us out.
Take a look back at the 10th Planet as well if you haven't already. See our thoughts there.
And we'll see you very soon. Well, we'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Till tomorrow.